Welcome to the Destiny Seeker series, where we will dive into the inspiring journeys of Christian moms who are fearlessly pursuing their destinies. I am your host, Lakeisha Enswa.
And I'm Allison Calloway. Together, we are the co-founders of the Well Mamas Movement, a community dedicated to empowering Christian mamas on their path to fulfillment.
We're here to share stories of resilience, faith, and the pursuit of purpose. Each episode will have the privilege of sitting down with incredible mamas who have taken bold steps to live out their destinies.
This series is all about highlighting the triumphs and challenges these moms faced along their journey. We'll explore how their faith has played a significant role in shaping their path and the impact that it's had on their families.
So, whether you're a mama seeking inspiration or someone looking for stories of courage in the face of adversity, this series is for you. Get ready to be moved, inspired, and encouraged through the incredible stories shared by our destiny seekers.
Join us as we embark on this transformative journey together and discover the power of living out your very own God-given destiny. Destiny Seeker Summit. We are so excited about today's chat because we are joined by an amazing mama who does all the things for all the people. And we're just so excited to share more about her story. Today, you all, we are talking about becoming what you needed. I am your host, Allison Calloway.
And I am Lakeisha Enswa, and we are joined by my friend and my boss and a huge inspiration to the community, Mrs. Alexia Doumbouya. Alexia is a doula. She is a professional in organizational leadership. She is a servant. She is a mother. She is a wife. But most importantly, she is bringing to the community, particularly to the community of mothers, what she wished she had at the beginning of her motherhood journey. So, ladies, please welcome our guest for today, Miss Alexia Doumbouya. Lexi, how are you today? We are so happy to have you with us. So, before we jump into the deep end, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
First off, thank you so much for the invite. I'm super excited to be here with you all. It's such a blessing to be amongst such amazing Coco moms such as yourselves too. I'm excited about being here today. Just really thrilled for just the opportunity to show up. I feel like God has really been doing a work in me over the last year in particular, I'll say. And so one of the things that I'm excited about where I am today is just understanding that journey and being able to share that as an opportunity to encourage and influence someone else too, and hopefully learn along the way myself.
Yes, yes. So let's just get right into it. I know the people might not know, but I know that part of the catalyst for you creating Coco Life was because you felt there was a gap when you gave birth to your oldest child. And so, in response to one, the call on your life, because we understand that this is a ministry, but also to that void, you created this organization. So, tell us a little bit about that. That catalyst. What that experience was like for you, just feeling like you didn't have the community you needed, but also what it was like for you to create this space that allows other moms to have that community.
Okay, so story time. Let's see. It was a dark and cold. No, so 12 years ago, right? In the beginning, so 12 years ago, I really did not have a full concept of what it meant. And I'll just use from a role perspective, what a doula was. So I know that there are people that attended births and supported during postpartum, but for me, that wasn't my reality. And so I wasn't aware of how important it is. So 12 years ago, after having my first daughter, I knew I was experiencing some what I now have the language for was perinatal or postpartum psychosis, anxiety, and depression. Then I just knew it made me feel horrible. At that time, I just knew it made me feel like an awful mom. I knew I was having intrusive thoughts. I knew that there were even points and times in that journey where I contemplated whether my existence in this world was more beneficial than harmful to my child. And so that led me to consider things that could have been permanent as it related to my own life. And so it was a dark place. And the part that made me feel worse about it is, how could you feel this way about yourself? How could you not be able to connect with your child? It's a life. And because in my community too, close friends and family of mine has struggled with having children. And here I am in this position to have had a child, and why can't I connect with her? Now, there were things in my life from a motherhood perspective that could have gotten me to that journey of motherhood a lot earlier, but there were decisions that were made when I was younger. And I understand now the reason for those things. And so there was this grappling that was kind of happening with whether I was meant to embark on this journey of motherhood truly, whether I was ready to embark on this journey, and considering what punishments maybe were being put on me because of decisions I had made earlier, right? Maybe, am I going through this because I made a decision early on for whatever the reasons were not to continue with the pregnancy? And so those were the things that at the time I couldn't speak of, I couldn't understand, I couldn't process. And so I suffered literally in silence too, because I was also very much so and acutely aware of what family surveillance looked like in the Black community. And so I wasn't there about to go tell my OBGYN or pediatrician that I was truly struggling with some of these things because I was afraid they would take my child away. So while I knew that these things were happening, I knew that at least I didn't want her to be taken away to someone else. And so I thank God for a friend of mine who was able to see some of those deficiencies that I was struggling with. And instead of just being like, oh, no, you'll be okay to pass, she was like, I think maybe you should talk to somebody. And the person she referred me to, she's a woman of God, you know, an elder in church and everything. And she was like, I think you should talk to someone who's a mental health professional. If that's through your church, that's great, but it needs to be someone who is specifically trained in this area. And that's kind of what led to what now is Coco Life. It started as wanting to create this mom group, this safe space, because I did end up finding out that it wasn't abnormal, that I wasn't alone. But the stigma associated with it is what makes you sit in that space of isolation. And it'll allow you to stay there. And that's kind of how Coco Life started. Then I decided to become a doula. And because I said, okay, wait, there's a role that I can play that, you know, wasn't an OBGYN, wasn't a labor and delivery nurse, because I was not going back to a 4-year degree or longer for that piece of it. But I knew I wanted to serve. And so I've always said I am my sister's keeper. And so I learned about this space of being a doula. And the reason why, and probably for most of us in Black and Brown communities, the word was unfamiliar to me is because that's not what we call it. Right? We call it auntie, we call it sis, mama, grandma, nana, big mama, whatever are the names that we use in our culture to define the person who steps up and steps in during that very vulnerable period. And so now that is the language that I use, that I decided to become what I didn't have. And so that looked like, okay, you do need to embark upon some additional training. I'm fine with that. I want to learn because I want to be skilled in my craft. I wanted to apply my lived and learned experience. But then too, I had to say, all right, so my background was in organizational leadership. What from that will allow me to differentiate myself in this space? And so then I said, all right, let's build community. I know how to do that really well. And I know that we use that language, you know, that term, it takes a village. We use it even in our church all the time. And what also started to become clear is we kind of lost a little bit of what that looks like to form that village specifically in this space of maternal health.
Oh, girl. Oh, girl. So many rich gems. Like, oh my goodness. You know, one thing that I constantly heard throughout your time speaking is that God really does turn our trials into triumphs, right? And for
Mm-hmm.
those of you that are here listening, I really hope you're gleaning from Alexia's story, because like she said, it was very dark. It was very cloudy. The path wasn't yet set or clear before her, right? But after wrestling with this thing, praying, working through, talking to mental health professionals, she was able to become very clear about the path that God has for her. Like, that is just so powerful. And I always say, like, God uses it all. Like,
Yep.
he doesn't
Yeah.
waste a single thing, right? Because
Mm-mm.
all of those things that you journey through, I always say, like, they're breadcrumbs. They are breadcrumbs that literally lead you to the path that you're supposed to be on. And that is so powerful. And shout out to you for like really offering your yes to this space, because it is such a crucial space that, to your point, a lot of us don't necessarily have the support or the language to adapt and identify with. But for you to be a front runner in this space, to say, no, sis, like, I got you. This is not normal. I am going to help you work through this. Or this is normal. You're feeling this way because your body is literally going, it's a roller coaster inside, right? And so we're able to really come alongside women and help. And we all know, when we think about like the maternal health crisis and all of these things, we have to be on the front lines for one
Yeah.
another. And so just thank you. Seriously, thank you for showing up in this space. And even though you didn't have it, again, your topic for today is you became what you needed, and thus what so many other women need as well. So that is so powerful. So, Alexia, maybe talk to us about some of the challenges that you faced when you started out on this entrepreneurial journey, especially when you thought about like you were stepping into uncharted territory, right? Like, it wasn't necessarily something you had a blueprint for, or you saw. Yes, you had some skills, and amen for transferable skills. Hallelujah.
Yes.
But talk to us a little bit about those challenges that you faced along the way.
That's a great question. And the challenges along the way too also helped to unearth some things from my past. So the one thing I will say definitely is any journey that you're going to embark on, the courage is not in this potential objective or this destination that you're trying to get to. It literally is the journey, because some things are going to come up along the way that are going to make you want to be like, never mind, that's okay, forget it, let somebody else do it, maybe I'm gonna go do something else, I'll write a book about it, type of thing.
Yeah.
Without actually doing it, right, going through the process. And so when I started along this journey of this space, entrepreneurism is something that has always been a passion of mine. I mean, I make jokes all the time to my, so we're in a season of winter, right? And so the weather is inclementing all over the place. And so I remember being like 10 years old and going out and shoveling snow so that I can make extra money to do things that I needed to do. I remember picking up cans and crushing cans. And so I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. But along this path, and especially then starting to also be in that space of mothering, there were some things from my past that I had to come clean with about myself that it was still bothering me. And some of that included sexual assault, right? And how that actually does affect you in pregnancy and in delivery and going through that journey. And I was very young. So my relationship with intimacy with men at the time, with people, and it may not seem like it matters, but if you approach life in this whole work life separation, you're ultimately playing yourself, is the best way I can put it, because there's no division. God doesn't even intend for there to be division in that. He talks about our time, he talks about our talents, he talks about our treasure in unison as a complete as a complete situation. And so that was one of the things that I had to deal with, is that was still bothering me, because how am I going to help someone else to be transparent? How am I going to help someone else to truly embrace this motherhood journey if I can't? So before the ink was dry on any Google Doc to start this or a plan or anything else. One of the things was like, okay, sis, why are we here? What are we going to do while we're here? What sort of differences do we want to make? And how are we going to do that? What's the need? What's the problem? And so it started to identify as, okay, the need is moms need community, Black moms in particular. Okay, how are we going to do this so that we can be unapologetic with the fact that we're here to support Coco moms? It doesn't mean we don't care about anybody else, but this is where we are suffering. Like you said, the disparities in the data have shown us that nothing has changed. That's a problem. Everything changes, right? Everything has improved as far as technology and advances all across. Why are we still dying? Why are we still suffering? And so part of that, though, includes not just the racialized trauma, but the intergenerational trauma. And so as this journey includes business, planning, funding, website development, team building, that was literally the first thing that I did was like, let me put together a team. Because again, that's one of the things that I know is necessary. I have this vision, I got this idea, but I know I can't execute it on my own. So we pulled together a project team who started with in Coco Life. Let's start here too. We started as Coco Bump. I think that's important because it was so funny. I was just watching a clip about Cat Williams, how when he first started, before he even was making more than 20K a year, I think he said, he was going by Cat in the Hat. He got a nice little cease and desist letter from Disney that was like, and no, you're not anymore. So I identify with that. I connect with that because when we started, we were Coco Bump. We had a beautiful, we still use her sometimes. She in circulation. We had a beautiful little logo that had brown mom, cute little bump, purple colors. And we also have gift boxes. So our stages that we support in Coco Life are pregnancy, postpartum, and compassion for the loss of a child or significant loved one. So we got these boxes and we got Coco Bump on it. And we got a nice little cease and desist letter in my email that said, you cannot put Bump on a box. And I was like, what? Huh? And I instantly, though, contacted an attorney that we were familiar with. And she was like, so here's how you can do this. You can either tussle back and forth with this large company who we are all familiar with that does bump on boxes and contents that relate. Or you're new enough, you want this to be more than just products. You want this to be service oriented too. You could just change the name. Okay, we'll do that. And then I thought about how I wanted this to be a holistic approach to this space. Yes, we're serving moms, but we need to empower this community, which means we need to support dads, kids, and all those people that are going to touch and interact with this mom. So I'm talking to my brother-in-law who's in tech and IT, and he's like, well, why don't you just use .black as a domain? I'm like, there's a .black? Lessons learned. So lesson 1, 2, I don't know what we're on right now, but lesson in here, message, as they say, is always have in your team people who are experienced in the areas that you're going to need to intersect with: technology, legal, accounting, those sorts of things. Because as an entrepreneur, the one differentiator between you and those larger companies is it's you. Okay. And so you're going to need to create those systems of success for yourself in there, which are going to include some basic strategies. So I was thankful that God let that happen then, and not all these years later, we had to shift and adjust the name. So we switched to CocoLife.Black. They left us alone, we left them alone, and we journeyed on to make sure that this space was more inclusive. So that was kind of what it looked like to move into this uncharted territory of maternal health, but also personal development, needing to identify what those things were within me that would impact myself or someone else in this space, because you don't want to trigger anyone either as you're growing too.
I love that. And it's funny because I've heard this story before. I probably could tell this story at this point. But every time I hear you share this story, I feel like it brings up something new for me. And this time, what I hear is two things. One, I hear determination, right? Because so many of us, one, could have gotten that cease and desist letter and be like, oh, I quit. That was a bad idea. End of story. I'm going back to what I'm familiar with. But also, as you talked about needing to heal yourself and needing to deal with the things that the emotional baggage that you have been carrying. And I think so many of us carry emotional baggage into our relationships, into motherhood, even into the idea of building community. I think as women, as moms, as Black women, we come from one place, right? Because I know, and I know that it's probably the truth for you ladies too, is that how our children are being raised, the environment in which they're being raised in, does not match how we were raised. Right? There are differences in the environment. And Alexia, you and I was just talking about this. The differences in the environments and the things that they're exposed to and the things that they have available to them. And it takes a lot of work for us not to take some of the same limiting beliefs that were imparted onto us and pour them into our children, right? By taking God out of the box, right? I think for so long our ancestors kind of had God in this neat little survival box, right? We had a lot of faith, but we had a lot of faith within this box because we were in survival mode. And now we get to take him out of that box and we get to go into thriving mode. But it takes a lot of work internally for us to be able to do that and then give our children a God that is infinite, right? That can literally do anything beyond that we could ask or think. But it takes work for us to be able to give them that God, right? We first got to take them out of the box, and then we've got to work on what we've been carrying with ourselves. And so I love that even before you journeyed into entrepreneurship, you were like, wait, let me get rid of some of this extra baggage. Let me cut the weights. It's like a hot air balloon, right? We want to go higher. We cut the sandbags, right? Like, let me cut this stuff off so that I can go higher. So now I can fill a void in the marketplace. How many of us, mamas, how many of you listening to this are holding on to things that are weighing you down, that are keeping you from soaring to your next height? Right? Imagine what Coco life would be, or wouldn't be for that matter, if you hadn't dealt with that emotional baggage first. So I just love to hear how you were aware enough to say, if I carry this into this season, it's going to be a hindrance and not a help. And so, my goal, my destiny is to be a help. So let me deal with this stuff first. I think that's so important for us to understand. And as women of faith, go see your therapist, sis. Make sure it's a therapist that pray, but go see your therapist. Okay. Every mom you listening to right now has one. Okay. Go see your therapist. Please.
Jesus and my therapist.
Okay. Like, please go see your therapist. I think that is so important. So I want to ask, as you make these decisions, right, as you grow Coco Life, as you move into the next phase of what the organization is becoming, how do you incorporate that faith into the decision-making process?
It is. I saw a t-shirt one time that said, what is it? Jesus is in my business plan, or faith is my business plan, or something. Yeah. I'm not naive enough to think that I don't have to do any like intentional planning, but that intentional planning is informed by the vision that is given by God, right? Yeah. Write the vision, make it plain. Yeah. And I think the thing that really moves me the most, and last year was, I kind of finally got, again, the language to define it. So on my hat here, it says your Coco Mom evolved. So when I started my other organization, Milestone Pros, our tagline was evolution in progress. And Milestone Pros was professional development focused, worked with small businesses, individual professionals on helping them to reach and achieve their goals. What I quickly understood when I started that one almost 8 years ago now, was that the way to progress through business was that self-reflection. Like there were too many people that were in these executive level positions that thought they were thriving, but that thrive to them looked like a crazy busy schedule because they had X dollars in their bank account, because they drove X type of car, that equated to thriving. And it just does not.
Right.
It doesn't. And so it was an opportunity to create a space again, because I love being able to create those safe spaces for people to thrive in. And so it was identifying those pieces that help you to reflect on where you are centered in your, making sure that you're centered in your purpose. So evolution and progress was the language that we use to say, it is an ongoing journey. And so part of that journey, in order, again, going back to the journey, part of that evolution comes with knowing and discerning the voice of God, gaining wisdom to know the decisions to make in God. And I remember in 2018, when I went to do this conference in London, I came back and found my mom on life support. And so at the time, I was like, what? I just came from doing this big conference, international, one of the first ones I had done internationally after I had started Milestone. And so why I'm coming back to this, and I totally unexpected. So she got better, over the course of those couple of months into the summer, because that happened in May of 2018. And so I was thrilled to know that she had overcome. And her and I in that moment too, because we had a challenged relationship, mostly because of some of the things that happened when we were younger, some of the things because she parented out of not just her deficit, because we all have them, but out of unhealed trauma. And so what that led to is some really heavy friction between the two of us. She went her way, I went mine, and we would meet somewhere in the middle once I had Camille. That's my oldest. And so thankfully, God was merciful on us and gave us a moment of space where we could kind of lock eyes or spirits, I'll say, because no words were shared, but it was a spiritual energy and connection that allowed us to say, okay, I understand, and her apologize in the way that she knew how, in the words that she knew how to use, and me to have a peace about it. Ultimately, August 1st of that year, she ended up passing away unexpectedly. So she had gotten better, but because of just the devastation to her body, and that's just, sometimes how infections and things can do, she ended up passing away on August 1st. Now, also in that year, I got engaged. So I'm super excited. I had been married before with my oldest, but gotten divorced. And so I really wasn't interested in moving anywhere near another relationship, but so be it. Okay, we go with God. That's how you just got to trust God, because we follow our plans. And his father passed away August 2nd. So in a 12-hour time frame, this is what we're wrestling with as far as losing parents. And so what God are you doing in this space? Then 2 months later, we get married, because at that point, we're like, listen, what's the point in waiting? Let's go ahead and do this. Our parents would want us. 3 or 4 months later, I found out I'm pregnant again. So here I am like, okay, this is going to be much better, because, better, you do better this time. So I felt like I was going to be even more of a valiant warrior in this one as it related to my pregnancy journey. Not so much. That other things influence that whole experience. But I'll say in the planning where God comes in is making sure, like you just said, Lakeisha, is to leave room for God to be God. And so in that journey of love, loss, and labor, we're going to say, okay, because a whole baby came out of this situation, I really couldn't see, again, even with this maternal health journey, how that was going to make any matter of a difference. Now I'm kind of reverting back to this imposter syndrome and, well, what can I do? Because look how quickly and easy it was for me to get in there. But again, that what God started to say was, you still got some stuff you got to deal with. We need to dig up. We got to stir this up before we can stir up these gifts. We got to move this other stuff out the way. And so I thought about, as you were talking, the book that Michelle Obama wrote, The Light We Carry. We do carry a lot of stuff. And you were saying this too, Allison. We carry a lot of stuff. But one of the things I carried, and I didn't realize how long I had been carrying this, is this imposter syndrome. I consider myself a confident person. I consider myself a capable person, but somehow when the enemy knows where your vulnerabilities are, and so for the life of me at that season, being accepted was a struggle for me. Being seen was a struggle for me. And so what that looked like is me constantly chasing approval. And so imposter syndrome will come in when you don't feel like you are receiving the support that you should be, whether it's from your peers or your parents or whatever that case may be. And so God started to settle in my spirit, Luke 1:45, that said, God bless she who remembers his God's promises to her. And he said, go back to what I said. I know it feels like a long time. I know you think I forgot. I know you think, you have canceled yourself out of this qualification for it, but I still got you. And so in moving on that journey and where God shows up again in the planning is I got to remember the promise, because the promise is what informs the plan. So once I remember what God said, then I could pick back up my plan and say, okay, again, what does this look like to make this space a reality and sustainable? And so sustainability then became my driver, and as it relates to my influence in maternal health. And last year was a challenging year with that rearing up again. And it was the most beautifully challenging year, right? I'm sure people looked on and was like, what? You felt this? How could you feel that? We see you doing all the things. But I was also committed to being transparent about that. And I remember there's a beginning part of the song that Beyonce sings in that song Bigger that says, if you feel insignificant, you better think again. And that kept resonating with me. And I'm not a beehive person or anything like that, but I believe I'm a believer in words and the power that they have. And so when I heard that plan says go bigger. That plan says, if you keep, that promise says go bigger. And then you tailor that plan to meet, again, that promise.
Girl, so good. And it's really so true. I just think about the fact that like God really does use it all. Like nothing we journey in this life is wasted, right? So you think about, some of the traumatic experiences that you've had to face, from childhood way up to, where you are today, right? God literally uses it all. And it really is a blessing when we can surrender to that and we can see life through that lens, right? And I think about, exactly what you said is like, you better recollect my promises and the things that I've done for you. I think about, reality versus evidence, right? Because reality right now says, okay, I can't do this. I feel like I want to shrink. I feel like I'm not going to be able to sit at this table. But evidence says, girl, I have shown up for you so many times. I have opened doors that you never even thought were going to come your way. Don't you dare get to this moment and play small. And I think we also have to remind ourselves, I think we've just become so soft into this reality. But like, do we really know the God we serve? Like for real. Like, do we realize that we are royalty? Like royal DNA runs deep in our veins. How dare we get here to this juncture and play small? Like it's not even an option. It's not even an option. So like you said, and like Queen Bee said, you better think again. Because
Think
we're
again.
not. Exactly. We are not doing it all, but I'm just so encouraged. And I think that's so powerful. And thank you for being so transparent and sharing, a lot of your journey. And for the moms listening, I want you all to be able to kind of come behind the curtains and see, just because we show up as such and we're doing all the things and we're showing up in our respective lanes does not mean life has come easy, right? Does not mean that even today we don't have to check ourselves because doubt is rising up, right? But it's a reality that says, you know what? We're going to do it afraid. We're going to do it without knowing what's around the corner because we trust our daddy. And so I love that so much. And so Alexia, maybe talk to us about, with this reality of like becoming what you did not see, what you did not have a mold for. What is something and how do you hope to encourage other women and moms that might be in similar situations where they know there's a call on their life to do something? They know they're supposed to be walking in a lane, but they've never seen it done before, right? What would you say to those women and how would you empower them?
Oh, that's a great question. One of the things I just want to hit on too is when you just said this about, know who your daddy is. I think, and I know I told you this too, Lakeisha, probably a year ago, I want to say, I remember God saying it's daddy-daughter season. And he was like, I'm calling my daughters. I need you to draw closer to me. I need you to be intentional about the time you spend with me, because I got some stuff I'm going to need y'all to do. But I need you to get really, really in so that your trust for me can grow and again evolve. And so what I think the message is that I've been able to glean from this entire experience is literally, and it's going to sound real simplistic and probably redundant, but it really is a matter of trusting the process. Like it's so, I know it is the most overused probably phrase, but the process though that I'm talking about trusting is the growth in God. Anything, everything that has happened over these last 8 or 9 years, I'm going to say, including the launch of Coco Life in that piece, the process really has been, as I look back over my life, if I was a singer, I'd sing it, but all I'm gonna say is I got testimony. And what I've seen is like how God was showing me those breadcrumbs you talked about, Allison, along the way. So he said, and this is the promise. So it's not going to always fulfill itself in the way that we think, but it will fulfill itself in incremental steps if you keep walking. You cannot make a move if you don't make a move. So what I started seeing is, okay, God has always shown me that you are a people person, but not in terms of your fluff or you just, no, people are your thing, and you connect and you can inspire and you can influence, but you can influence change in a way that will help someone break free of some things. And so at the time, I'm just looking at that in that season, that meant how I worked with teams from a professional perspective in my corporate job. Then that moved on to how I worked with kids when I did youth initiatives through Milestone with our CHAMP program, which stood for Committed to Honoring and Achieving My Purpose. And then that looked like being in maternal health. So what we have to remember as moms is that evolution and progress thing. Where you started yesterday, or even what you thought you were going to be doing for the rest of your life because you got your little nursing degree, and so you feel like, okay, I'm just going to be a nurse. God is going to show you at each stage what it looks like to take those transferable gifts and transfer them into kingdom work as it relates to your ministry. And so that's where the trusting of the process goes, is don't put yourself in a position where you're so tied to a specific part of the message that you're like, I can't do anything else. Because 8 years ago, when I I remember saying to myself at the place I was at, oh, I can do this. Like this is easy for me. Like this is automatic for me. I could do this. And I got fired like 2 weeks later. And I was like, what the heck just happened? And I remember not wanting to talk about the firing because of the stigma that associated with it. And while there was a lot of discriminatory and targeted things behind that firing, it completely worked out for my good. So I'll take it. It sucked at the time. It was tough at the time because I had a whole child as a single mom I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to take care of. But then that was it too. That was God's way of saying, because you want to try to take care of it. That's cute. So as moms, it's so hard. It's so difficult, whether you're doing it by yourself or in support with another parent. We have to keep journeying along. And the thing I told another doula friend of mine earlier last year, when she was going through some of that imposter syndrome too, she was like, Lexi, I don't understand. I was like, because I do it scared. Like at this point, I'm going to do it terrified out my mind, because I know my dad's there. Like, I don't got to worry about it. I'm jumping because dad's going to catch me. He got me. My dad got me. So that's the only way I know how to move, is like you said, is to surrender. And so surrendering means, and I know the word tells us about not being fearful or anxious in anything. So I'm not saying being fearful that it won't work out, right? Because that's when you start to divide the word. You have to understand, God's not saying you won't be fearful about something, but what are you fearful about? Oh, I'm just fearful to move forward. I know it's going to work out for my good. Like you said, all things work together. And so even in that, the words that were encouraging me, because then you start to put the pieces together. I was born a premature baby, 2 months premature. It was the 80s. People did things during that time when they were pregnant that could yield preterm birth, but we're not going to talk about that. That's a different subject. Y'all don't want to know that right now. So I was 2 months preterm. I remember in high school, I had friends that, had pregnancies that they sustained, and I would support there with them, taking them to appointments and things like that. I remember my aunt and uncle having a loss when I was young as a teenager, an infant loss. And I remember going to the baby's funeral. And I remember just in my mind wondering why, like, God, why would this happen? And the language that they started to use in their ministry was that there's purpose to my pain. And so we don't like pain. Pain is uncomfortable, but there's this thing called productive discomfort that we also have to lean into. And that's what God has shown me over this time period, is that if you keep trusting me in this process, I promise you, where you are today, Mom, where you are today, sis, is not going to be the same. Not because your bank account is going to somehow blow zeros of dollars behind it, but who is the supplier of everything will give you the talents to be able to transform that into the things that will sustain you beyond.
Yeah.
My God, my God. Y'all can't see it because my contacts hide it well. I'm literally fighting back tears here.
You and me both.
I
I ain't coming on y'all show no more.
don't be like that. Don't be like that.
Oh my God.
For me, it is twofold because I have been able to witness this evolution over the last, I feel like 6 years almost. I think we met when I was pregnant with my twin, so we talking 7 years now. And I've been able to see the elevation and the evolution. And I've always marveled at it, the fact that she will literally just go and do and be. And I'm like, girl, I can't. I can't. But what I will say to you, mamas, is surround yourself with people who push you into your next level. Not people who question your next level, not people who try to discourage you from your next level, but people who literally want to push you into your next level. I am so grateful for the two women who you are listening to right now, Allison and Alexia, because the last year for me has been working with the both of them and us pushing each other into our next levels. However, they are both extroverts and I am not. And so being with them has really forced me to do a lot of things uncomfortably, and in fear and in worry. But again, when you surround yourself with God-fearing women who want to push you into your next level, you can conquer things that you never thought were possible. You can find yourself in rooms that you never imagined you would be in. You could find yourself in positions in doing things that you never thought was possible. But a lot of that is in who you align yourself with. And we've talked about this, being sensitive to the spirit, being sensitive to what God is telling you. These relationships are not orchestrated out of selfish ambitions. These relationships are orchestrated out of divine assignment. And it is only through that we are even able to sit here today and bring you this inspirational message from Alexia. It is by divine assignment. God put these pieces into place so that we could bring this message to you. So I need y'all to hear this. Surround yourself with God-fearing women who want you to win. That is what Wells Mama's movement is about. That is what Coco Life is about. That is what these women who we are bringing to you are about. We want you to win, and not because it somehow gives us a pat on the back, but because us seeing you win, us pushing you to win, allows us to give God the pat on the back that he so rightly deserves. I that's all I got. Lex, thank you.
I gotta say in closing, the Holy Spirit reminded me of something a few things. One, everything you said was so pointed. God said this year is the season to thrive. And call God on his word. I promise you'll answer. Last year, I on my knees, prostrate on the ground, tears in my eyes, and said, God, you gotta send me some help. I like, and not just like voluntary type help, like that, you know, okay, I can do this here and there. I said, you have to.
Yeah.
My life, my marriage, my parenting depends on you sending help. I opened my eyes and some months or so went by. Because again, God's timing, some months went by because I will call God. I will put that out there in the atmosphere. And I put that out there. He said, I promise I got you. And before the end of the year, God enlarged our territory in Coco Life and sending Lakeisha to be a willing contributor to the space, unlike anything that we'd ever seen. Elle and I, as we were doing the work, the other Coco mom who influenced why we support moms in compassion through pregnancy loss and the loss of a loved one. And so I'm going to tell you, call him, put it out there. God, I need this, and I'm going to trust you for it. He will answer it. And the reason why we move this and we say this to each other is because, yes, energy is infectious as far as positivity, but obedience is infectious.
Yeah.
When I see Allison doing what she's supposed to do, and I see Lakeisha and the two of them showing up in Well Mama's movement, obedience is infectious. So then I'm like, let me pick up my pen and get myself to and do some writing or do some this. And so in order for us to thrive, we have to do that. And a smart pastor, evangelist, some may call her, said to me that coming into this year, Proverbs 18:16 would be the message. And it says, I'll leave with this, a person's gift makes room for him and brings him before great people. And we'll sometimes look at those great people to think like the president. But as I sit here among great people today, both in my line of sight and those who are listening in, call him at his word. Your talents that he has gifted you with is going to make room. You just got to be obedient and move in it.
Amen.
Just like a breath of fresh air, right? Like this fresh wind just sweeping through. And thank you for really, making that the punching point, because that really is so powerful. I think we have to really recognize the authority that God has given us, right?
Yeah.
And then dominion in the earth that we have. And my God, if we ever got a hold of just how bold we are to be, the audacity, like, the enemy would have a run for his money, okay? And we would literally set this world on fire, because we are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus, right? Change agents. And so I hope that you all really just listen in and glean from all the things that Alexia said today, right? But I'm sticking with that. And I'm going to make that, a very poignant prayer point. Call God at his word, because it is really so true. And he will do it. We have not because we ask not, right? So be bold enough and have the audacity to ask. So Alexia, we just thank you so much, sis, for coming on here. I feel like every time I talk to you, you're just dropping bombs. You are such a powerhouse. And I just pray that like God continues to pour over your ministry, over your business, your family, and everything that he has set out for you to do, because girl, it's big and it is incredible. So before we let you go, Alexia, can you tell the people, tell the mamas how we can get in touch with you?
All right, y'all. So let me see if y'all been taking notes. Okay. So we are on, let me see, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. Don't go on Twitter or X, GR, whatever they call it now, or TikTok, because we're not all the way there yet. But we are on those different platforms at CocoLife.Black. That's right. You can find us there. That is also the website. So please visit us there. And as we say, continue to follow us and see how we continue to serve moms bump and beyond.
Amen.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
I am just so grateful for this time. Ladies, listen, I want you to go make sure you follow all of our speakers. Let them know how their story has inspired you, how it has blessed you. And then stay in community, stay in contact, because that is really the ultimate purpose of this entire thing. Alexia, again, thank you. It is always a pleasure to have you share with our community. We are grateful for you. Mamas, we will check in again with you soon.